The second major category is energy efficiency, and this is consumers being able to manage their energy better and more efficiently by having more information. And this is through a combination of real-time displays, next-day online data, and as we've seen in several pilots successfully, monthly bill inserts. That's the first place that people turn to for energy usage information. As I was saying earlier, my expectation is that real-time displays will probably not be special purpose ones as you see in this slide, but will likely show up on your smartphone or your laptop, something else that already has a display. People don't generally want another item sitting around on their countertop. And then the next day online is starting to be a feature of a number of the deployments. The real-time display, by the way, or real-time access to the meter comes through this home area network interface, which is a Zigbee radio. So there's a second radio in each of these smart meters, and that sends the signal into the home, which then gets captured by something. A lot of people think that's going to be the existing router that people already have for their laptop. So again, there won't be any additional cost for that. And then from there it can be communicated through both networks from that router, which can then operate within the home. So anyway, there's this real-time feedback and then online feedback. And then so how does this turn into energy reductions? Behavior is one way. People turn things off. And then equipment. Over time, understanding how much a refrigerator uses and understanding, well, if I get a more efficient one, I can then save X by doing so because I have this information now. And ideally, it'll have a little Zigbee chip inside of it and be able to control it remotely and automatically for even greater efficiency. How much are we going to save this way? Well, I think it's probably going to be 25 or 30%, to be honest. But in my number here, I use 10%. I use that because I relied on a number of industry studies, but particularly this one from Oxford that finds a range of 5 to 15% when you provide these kinds of feedback, and that gets you to $35 billion a year. So this is really the big savings category. Another big one is in peak reduction, and this is avoiding the construction of additional peaking plants or buying peaking capacity in the wholesale market. And there are a couple of mechanisms. One is pricing-based, and another is automated control of equipment and appliances, load control, if you will. There have been many, many pilots on this. We're going to talk about, or Commissioner Morgan is going to talk about one of them. Typically in the pricing programs, you'll see 10 to 20% reductions, and in the control programs, load control or smart thermostat alone, 10 to 30%. And when you put them together, they are largely synergistic, so you are by doing both. And you don't get all of it by doing either one alone. The chart on the right gives you a sense of quantity of pilot programs, and also you see variability in results that follow these themes that I just went over. So the pricing plus control gets you the greatest results, greatest reduction. So what's this going to do for us nationally? Well, if you get this out to everybody, you can see the numbers above go from 10 to 40%. I use 10% here to be conservative. Capacity costs will vary regionally. You may see them as low as $20 or $30. I've seen them as high as $200. So using one in the range of 100 and applying that 10% to that, and then we have about 800 gigawatts of capacity in the U.S. today, gets you $8 billion a year on this. A kilowatt year is an odd metric, I'm sure, for many of you. Really what that is the cost of owning a power plant for the life of the plant, but taken on an annual basis. So that includes things like financing costs, depreciation costs, maintenance costs, fixed personnel costs. Of course, does not include any operating costs. No fuel costs are included in that. So it's just the cost of having that hardware sitting there in order to be turned on during a peak hour. So another major source is dealing with the intermittency of load that are coming via the addition of renewable resources. Based on the various targets in the states, we're looking at 20 to 30, California's 33% in the 2020 timeframe. And you can see in this chart the variability of wind, the average being in the middle there with the stars on the line, and then the actual days being shown there. So how does the industry deal with that? Well, the NERC, the National Electric Reliability Council, requires a backup power plant to be sitting there for every kilowatt of wind that's out there. So how can this be solved through smart grids and smart meters? Well, through automated load following. So this is things like storing energy in electric vehicles, in building thermal storage, in refrigerators, and then scheduling the operation of those things so they can respond to these changes. If we assume another 10% response, and this of course will take longer to get this 10% because things like EVs are further out and automated refrigerators will take longer to get deployed, we get another $8 billion per year. So those were all the benefits, and then this is the cost side. And I would make a couple of points here. One is, what is the cost per meter? If you take the average of these various, there's about 20 projects that I've got listed on here. These are all from regulatory filings, by the way. You get $221 per meter for everything, except it doesn't include any in-home devices or any smart thermostats. And then you see it broken up in the pie chart on the right there, with the hardware being only about half of that, and then you see those other costs there. If we add smart grid costs to that, I've seen very widely ranging estimates for that. My own estimate is, and I think these are very high numbers, but if you take these numbers per feeder per substation, then you get to the aggregate costs that I used here. So you see, and again, annualized. So this is taking that hardware cost of those automating meters and so on and spreading them over the life.
May I jump in with a quick question? Do these costs include upgrading back office systems, meter data management, that kind of stuff as well?
They do, and on the previous slide, there was, I forget the percentage in there, something like 18% or so was in there for IT costs and for project management costs.
Thank you.
So you get the meters and the grid together about $15 billion per year, and you add those benefit categories, you get $68 billion per year. Again, this is the high-level stuff. Steve will take you into a specific case with Pepco, but the categories are really all the same that I've gone through. And then I just wanted to conclude by, again, pointing out that McKinsey's numbers are quite a bit higher at 131. So this is that's the big picture, the various sources, and the other point I would emphasize again is that most of these benefits flow directly to consumers. So it's important in the evaluation and the rate treatment of these investments that be looked at.
Chris, thank you. Great stuff. A couple of questions, and Steve and Rick may want to jump in on these as well. And these are sort of big strategic issues, but I think they're important ones. And the first one is energy efficiency is one of the major benefits that you've shown today, Chris, but that also, depending on how you're regulated, may cause a utility to have a great drop in revenue. So how do you solve that conundrum?
There are a couple of ways to do that, and that's a problem that's well recognized, and some states are further along than others. One is decoupling, which I actually will say that I'm not a fan of. Another way of doing that is to create a regulatory asset, which has some issues, but I think is maybe a preferable solution. But I think the real answer is that you do need regulatory policy that makes the utility whole in this and makes them a winner as well. We need to share these benefits and give them the proper incentives.
And for Rick or Steve, do you have insights on this issue of spending more on smart grid? Yeah.
This is Rick Morgan at the D.C. Commission. We have adopted decoupling for our electric utility, PEPCO, and it does seem to be working well and addressing concerns about the disincentive toward energy efficiency. I think the verdict is still out on how much of a problem this is. I know with a number of pilots, including our own in D.C., we didn't find a huge statistically valid amount of savings. I'm hopeful that those kind of savings that Chris is talking about will emerge, and if so, then it may be an issue. But thus far, I haven't seen a lot of it. And there are other mechanisms as well besides decoupling. Different states may do it different ways. In fact, that's already happening. Duke Power has an approach that's a little different from decoupling. So there are certainly ways to handle it, and that's something that I think we need to pay attention to.
This is Steve, with PHI. Our view is that decoupling is the preferable model, and it helps both not only on the AMI case argument, internally relationship to the shareholder fiduciary responsibility, but also helps with energy efficiency and a broader array of DR. We've sought and had received, as Commissioner Morgan had mentioned, approval in D.C. for decoupling. We also have it in place in our Maryland market, and we expect to have it in place soon in our Delaware market. And we do believe that that's an important component of aligning basically fiduciary responsibility to shareholders with customers' interests that we serve. So we do think that that's a good model.
Terrific.
If I could just add that the dynamic pricing is really focused on helping customers to shave peak rather than shave overall kilowatt hours. So the number of hours that you're really impacting is going to be limited. So you may not be cutting into the revenues as much as some utilities might fear, but in fact still having a big impact on peak and thereby saving a lot for both the utility and its customers.
Yeah,
thank you, Rick.
Hey, can I just weigh in on just one last comment on that? True for dynamic pricing, but one of the other things that we see that we're trying to take advantage of is pushing out more information after AMI is deployed through internet access, portals, and also information on the bill. So we hope that will motivate consumers to reduce their energy consumption.
Thank you. Well, in the interest of time, we do need to move on. We're getting some great questions. We will be answering all of those in more detail and in a more thoughtful way by email. So I encourage you to keep typing them in as they occur to you throughout. And we will get to several more live here today.